Last time we saw a for loop in the last video, and magically this else has something to do with for loop in Python. Well, this else clause makes sense for if, but in for loop it hardly makes sense. But let me try to make sense of else clause for loop. There is an else part of for loop as well in Python, not in other languages. I don't know any other language that has this else part. Maybe there is some, but I don't know. So this else part in Python, particularly in for loop, this else part or else block will only execute if for completes its iterations. For example, this is a set. A set like a list is a collection. List is defined by square brackets. Set is defined by curly brackets. The set is just similar like the set in mathematics. We will see the set, lists, tuples, dictionaries, and many of these data structures in detail in data structures portion, but just I've introduced this. Just consider this set has three elements: apple, 4.9, and cherry. Apple is one object or one data. 4.9 is one data, which is a floating point data, and cherry is one data, which is a string data. Okay, so this S has three elements, three different elements. So now for X in this set, as long as X is in the set, the very first time the X will be apple, so it will print apple. Next time X will contain a 4.9 as long as, so iterate over this set. As long as X is inside the set, pick elements one by one and just print them all. Okay, we expect that when X is apple, when the very first time X will be apple, it will print apple. Next time X will be 4.9, it will print 4.9. Next time X will be cherry, it will print cherry, and the loop ends because there is no item in set to iterate over. Because the loop finishes its complete iteration, there are expected 3 iterations, and the loop finishes those. Now the else part will execute and you will say, okay, loop completes its iterations. Well, you will be wondering in what case the else will not execute. If you apply any break statement inside the loop body, which means you forcefully remove some of the iterations that were going to be executed, but the loop did not complete its iterations, then the else part will not run. So let's see an example in Jupyter to get a good grip on this else. Okay, let's define a set. S is a variable name. You can have any variable name. Let's say apple, or let's say 4.9, I guess. And then we were having, let's say, cherry, if these spellings are correct, I guess, cherry. Okay, then for X in S, as long as X is in S, print X, fine, else, print when you finish the loop terminates with success, or all iterations, it completed all its iterations. And this is a statement that is completely outside the loop. Outside the loop. So let's run this. So you can see apple, 4.9, cherry, loop terminates with success, outside the loop. Okay, now you might be thinking in what case this else will not execute. Okay, if for example as long as X is in N, if I say, okay, let's say I take a counter here, I equals 1, that's a counter, let's say, and every time I just increment I plus equals 1, and then I check if I is equal to 3. If I is equal to 3, then just break, let's say, else, just for readability, else pass. Now this else is else of this for, and this else is else of this if, And this pause statement is just a statement for doing nothing. Now what you do when I is equal to 1, you print this. I plus equals I becomes 2. 2 is equal to 3, false. So you pause, you move on. Next time x will print 4.9, I will become 3, and 3 is equal to 3, that's correct. The break will execute, which means the loop should have one more iteration, but the break just disrupt that one more iteration that should be there. Because the loop could not complete its iteration due to this certain condition, this else part of the loop will not execute and you will go directly outside this loop. So let's run this code and see the result. So you can see this, Apple 4.9 outside the loop. I would recommend, although this else is there for loop, but I would recommend to avoid using else in the beginning. I mean, you may be confusing this else. By the way, there is a mistake here. This else should be ended with a colon here. Okay, so I would recommend to not use else clause for a for loop in the beginning until you really need it, because you may confuse this else with the else of if condition, and you may think something else and the program behave in a different way. So either way, if you want to use else for a for loop is there in Python. Okay, just one more example of for loop, and here we use dictionary. I'm introducing some data structures here just for fun. We will see these data structures in detail later on. So dictionary, that's a key value pair. It is like a set, but one item consists of two numbers. That's called a key, and that is called a value. That's a key and that's a value. Like a dictionary, we have key and values. So now as long as x is in x, x represents to key and d is our dictionary, and d of x represents to whatever value that x points to. For example, apple is a key that points to 44. Cherry is a key that points to game. For example, if I write d apples, apple, the result will be 44. Similarly, d of cherry, the result will be game. Okay, so let's iterate over this dictionary using this for loop. All am I showing you that this for loop is very, very handy of iterating over different data structures and a lot of data and stuff. Whereas while loop is more handy in checking the conditions and stuff. Although you can do all the stuff using while loop, you can all the stuff using for loop, but one is better over the other in certain situations. So let's just run this for a dictionary. Let's say I have a dictionary D. It's defined like a set. Let's say my key is A and my value is 10. Let's say my key is B and value is minus 19. And let's say my key is C and my value is, let's say, ABC. Let's say that's my dictionary. So for x in D, print the key as well as the value of that key. So now you can see the key is A, the value is 10, the key is B, the value is minus 19, the key is C, the value is ABC. So this for loop is really, really handy in iterating over a lot of data structures and stuff, although it has other applications as well, but this is handy. Okay, great. So that's about loops, for loops and while loops. These are two kinds of loops in important loop. These are two important kind of loops in there in Python. In the next video, I will directly go to Jupyter Notebook, and we will be practicing for this for loops or while loops. We will be practicing the loops. We will be doing actually examples of nested loops. We will be actually solving a problem like we did in the if conditions. We solved a problem previously. We wrote a code for it. Here we will also write a code, and we will get a good grip on the loops. So hope to see you in the next video. We will solve a problem in Jupyter Notebook directly. Okay, hope to see you in the next video.